In the dense redwood forests of Northern California, 120 kilometers from San Francisco, lies one of the most mysterious places on the planet. Bohemian Grove is not just a picturesque corner of nature, but a territory shrouded in secrets and rumors for a century and a half. This name first appeared in the public sphere in 1872, when a group of artists, journalists, and musicians from San Francisco decided to create a place for solitude, away from the bustle of the city. Located near the tiny town of Monte Rio, this grove of over 2,000 hectares quickly transformed into something much more than just a place for creative meetings. Even the first mentions of it in the press were surrounded by an aura of mystery. High walls, armed guards, and a strict ban on photography. All of this from the very beginning created the image not of an ordinary country club, but of a place where something hidden from public view was happening. The first accounts of Bohemian Grove described it as a place where the Bohemia could escape the conventions of Victorian society. But very soon, the composition of its members began to change, attracting increasingly influential and powerful people. The history of the Bohemian Grove began in 1872, when a group of Bohemian journalists from the San Francisco Examiner decided to create a place where they could relax and socialize away from the hustle and bustle of the city. James Bowman, an artist and journalist, is considered the founder of the club, and his colleagues in the profession supported his idea. Initially, it was truly a creative circle where artists, writers, musicians, painters, actors gathered to exchange ideas and inspiration in a relaxed atmosphere. The first meetings were held as summer camps with music, theatrical performances, and poetry readings. Club members called themselves Bohemians, referencing the lifestyle of the 19th century creative Bohemia. However, in the first decades, the composition of the participants began to change significantly. Businessmen, bankers, and politicians from San Francisco began to join the creative intelligentsia, attracted by the informal atmosphere and the opportunity to establish useful connections. By the beginning of the 20th century, Bohemian Grove had transformed from a simple creative circle into an elite club, membership in which became a sign of high social status. Among the early famous members were industrialist Henry Kaiser, banker Amadeo Giannini, founder of Bank of America, and even future U.S. President Herbert Hoover, who joined the club before the start of his political career. In 1913, the club acquired land in the Russian River Valley, where the current Bohemian Grove is located. The territory was chosen for its seclusion and picturesqueness. The majestic redwoods created an atmosphere of mystery and detachment from the outside world. It was here that the traditions and rituals that would later become the club's hallmark began to form. One of the turning points in the history of Bohemian Grove was the first Cremation of Care ceremony in 1929. This theatrical performance, which involved the burning of an effigy in front of a giant stone owl, became a symbol of the club and gave rise to many conspiracy theories in the future. In the period after World War II, the club finally transformed into a closed community of the political and economic elite. If previously artists predominated among the members, now their place was taken by corporate presidents, high-ranking officials, and influential politicians. Bohemian Grove became a place where people making key decisions in world politics and economics could meet and discuss global issues in an informal setting. If the Bohemian Grove is the chessboard of global power, then its pieces represent a unique collection of the planet's most influential people. Who are these chosen few, granted access to the world's most exclusive club? The list of participants reads like an encyclopedia of the global elite. Among them are no fewer than 10 United States presidents, including both Bushes, Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, and Herbert Hoover. Here one can find the heads of major corporations, from Silicon Valley tech giants to oil magnates and banking kings. Heads of the Federal Reserve, secretaries of defense, directors of the CIA, all find time for the annual pilgrimage to the Californian forest. Media moguls, controlling major publications and television channels, also constitute a significant portion of the club's members. According to some data, the total number of participants does not exceed 2,500 people, a vanishingly small fraction of the world's population, concentrating colossal power in their hands. The process of selecting new members is shrouded in no less secrecy than the gatherings themselves. Even immense wealth and a high position do not guarantee an invitation. A recommendation from at least 2 current club members is required, after which the candidacy is considered by a closed council. Waiting lists stretch for decades. There are known cases of people spending up to 15 years on them before receiving the coveted invitation. The financial threshold for entry is also quite high. The initiation fee, by various estimates, ranges from $25,000 to $100,000, and annual membership dues can reach tens of thousands. However, for billionaires and heads of state, this is hardly a significant sum. It is noteworthy that membership in the club is exclusively available to men. Women can only be present on the territory of the Bohemian Grove as service personnel or entertainers invited to amuse the guests. This archaic tradition persists despite all modern trends towards equality. In addition to permanent members, there is a system of invited guests. Each club member has the right to bring a limited number of guests to the annual gatherings. This is how many high-ranking officials get into the Grove, who may later be admitted as permanent members. Interestingly, not all invited guests know exactly where they are being taken. Many only learn about the club's existence when they arrive at its gates. Every year in mid-July, when most Americans enjoy typical summer pastimes, a completely different event begins in the redwood forests of California. For 2 weeks, the Bohemian Grove transforms into a unique camp for the most influential people on the planet. The 2,000-hectare territory becomes home to hundreds of campsites, each with its own name and special status. Mandalay, Forest Hut, Hill, Morning Star. Behind these romantic names lie camps belonging to major corporations and influential families. Some of them have existed since the 19th century and are passed down through inheritance. The daily routine in Bohemian Grove is strictly regulated, despite the apparent freedom. Mornings begin with breakfast at one's own camp or in the central dining hall. After this, participants gather for so-called Lacedaemonian talks, informal discussions about politics, economics, and culture. It is noteworthy that, officially, work-related issues are forbidden to be discussed, although many testimonies indicate that it is precisely here that crucial deals are concluded and decisions affecting the global economy are made. During the day, various entertainments are organized for participants, from hunting and fishing to golf and water sports on the Russian River. Evenings are dedicated to more formal events. In a special open-air amphitheater, classical music concerts, theatrical performances, and performances by world-class guest artists are held. After the official program, participants disperse to their camps, where informal socializing continues, often late into the night. Despite the luxury of many camps, living conditions in Bohemian Grove are deliberately maintained in a rather Spartan style. Even the most influential participants sleep in simple wooden cabins or tents, using shared showers and toilets. This creates a special atmosphere of equality and camaraderie among people accustomed to luxury and privilege. The service staff is a separate story. Hundreds of chefs, waiters, maids, and guards ensure the comfortable stay of the elite. All of them sign strict non-disclosure agreements, and their smartphones and other camera-equipped devices are confiscated upon entry to the territory. Many employees have worked in the Grove for decades, passing on their positions by inheritance. The culmination of the entire two-week gathering is the Cremation of Care ceremony, held on the first weekend. This theatrical performance, during which an effigy symbolizing worldly worries and problems is burned at the foot of a 40-meter stone owl. The ritual is accompanied by music, lighting effects, and a dramatic performance involving dozens of actors. In the heart of the Bohemian Grove, hidden among majestic redwoods, the most mysterious and controversial ritual of the elite club takes place: the Cremation of Care ceremony. Every year on the first Saturday of the July meeting, as twilight envelops the forest, hundreds of the planet's most influential people gather on the shore of artificial Lake Bohemian to witness this enigmatic spectacle. At the center of attention is a giant 40-meter owl statue carved from stone, a symbol of ancient wisdom and secret knowledge. Its enormous stone eyes seem to observe everyone present, and its massive wings create the sensation of an ancient deity descended into the Californian forest. The ceremony begins with the appearance of a torchlight procession. Dozens of people in red hooded robes slowly move towards the lake, carrying burning torches. They are accompanied by ominous music, a mixture of organ chords and low choral voices, creating an atmosphere of a medieval mystical ritual. On the shore of the lake stands a small boat in which there is an effigy, a symbolic representation of care. According to club legend, this is the personification of all worldly problems and anxieties from which participants must free themselves during their stay in the Grove. The boat slowly moves across the lake, approaching the base of the stone owl. At this time, the chief master of ceremonies, often referred to as the high priest, delivers a ritual speech in a mixture of English and Latin. He invokes ancient forces and spirits of the Grove, asking them to accept the sacrifice and free those present from the burden of everyday worries. The culmination of the ceremony is the moment when the boat with the effigy reaches the base of the owl, and the high priest throws a burning torch into it. The effigy bursts into bright flames, and heartbreaking screams, symbolizing the destruction of care, emanate from hidden speakers. At this moment, the owl statue is illuminated with red lights, creating the impression that its eyes are burning in the darkness. Many researchers see in this ritual echoes of ancient pagan ceremonies, in particular, the worship of Moloch, a deity to whom, according to biblical texts, human sacrifices were offered. The owl, in various mythological traditions, is associated with wisdom, but also with darkness and death. In some occult teachings, it is considered a symbol of secret knowledge, accessible only to the initiated. The club members themselves explain the ceremony more prosaically, as a theatrical performance designed to symbolically free participants from the stress and obligations of the outside world. According to them, it is merely a dramatic way to create a special atmosphere in which one can escape from everyday problems and truly relax. However, critics and conspiracy theorists see something much more sinister in this ritual: evidence that the global elite secretly professes pagan cults and worships ancient deities. They are particularly alarmed by the fact that the ceremony is conducted by people who make key decisions in world politics and economics. The symbols of the Bohemian Grove are rooted in ancient pagan traditions, creating a mysterious occult subtext for all club ceremonies. The central and most famous symbol is the giant stone owl, a creature revered in many ancient cultures. In Greek mythology, the owl was the companion of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, symbolizing insight and secret knowledge. However, in other traditions, especially Middle Eastern ones, the owl was associated with darkness, death, and the underworld. Some researchers draw parallels between the Bohemian Grove owl and the ancient Canaanite deity Moloch, to whom, according to biblical texts, human sacrifices were offered. The very form of the 40-foot statue, with outstretched wings and empty eye sockets, evokes associations with ancient idols worshipped long before the advent of modern religions. It is noteworthy that the image of an owl can be found on a $1 bill. A tiny bird hides in the pattern around the number 1. For conspiracy theorists, this serves as proof of a connection between the financial elite and secret societies. Another important element of Bohemian Grove symbolism is the tree spirits, mythical creatures believed to inhabit the ancient redwoods. During annual gatherings, participants often perform rituals aimed at establishing contact with these spirits. Actors portraying forest deities emerge from behind the trees during ceremonies, creating an atmosphere of mystical unity with nature. This practice resembles the druidic rituals of the ancient Celts, for whom trees were sacred beings possessing their own consciousness. Fire plays a special role in the club's symbolism. The Cremation of Care ceremony centers around a ritual bonfire in which an effigy is burned. In pagan traditions, fire symbolized purification and transformation. Through it, the old was destroyed, making way for the new. Many ancient cultures practiced the burning of symbolic images to get rid of negative influences. Color symbolism also has deep meaning. The red robes of the ceremony participants refer to ancient priestly vestments. Red has traditionally been associated with blood, sacrifice, and life force. The green color, dominating the natural environment of the grove, symbolizes rebirth and fertility. Ritual masks used during some ceremonies have parallels in shamanic practices of various cultures. By wearing a mask, a person symbolically transforms, adopting the qualities of the depicted creature or spirit. In the context of Bohemian Grove, this can be interpreted as a temporary departure from social roles, allowing participants to interact on a deeper, archetypal level. Critics and conspiracy theorists see in this symbolism proof that the world elite secretly adheres to occult beliefs that contradict official religious and ethical norms. Supporters of the club, on the contrary, argue that all these symbols and rituals are purely theatrical, being a tribute to tradition and a way of creating a special atmosphere of brotherhood among participants. Behind the majestic redwoods and opulent rituals lies the main value of the Bohemian Grove, the opportunity for informal communication between people who hold the levers of world power. It is here, far from journalists and public attention, that those very meetings take place which can potentially change the course of history. The format of such negotiations is strictly regulated by the club's unwritten rules. Officially, business matters are forbidden from discussion in the Bohemian Grove. It is positioned as a place for rest and entertainment. In practice, however, these rules are observed very selectively. According to former employees and rare participants who decided to break the vow of silence, real negotiations are conducted in the shade of the redwoods, during morning walks or nighttime campfire conversations. The absence of recording devices and the strictest prohibition on any documentation of events create ideal conditions for frank discussions. A former U.S. State Department employee who wished to remain anonymous, described in his memoirs how, in 1984, an informal meeting between high-ranking American officials and representatives of the Soviet Union took place in one of the Bohemian Grove camps. This meeting preceded official negotiations on nuclear arms reduction, and, according to the author, it was there that key positions were agreed upon, which later formed the basis of official agreements. Another well-known case is the preliminary discussion of the merger of two major technology companies in the 2000s. The deal, valued at tens of billions of dollars, was virtually agreed upon during a nighttime conversation between the heads of these corporations in the Bohemian Grove, a year before the official announcement. Of particular interest is the so-called Hill Camp, one of the oldest and most influential in the Bohemian Grove hierarchy. According to available data, it is here that representatives of the financial elite, heads of major banks and investment funds, traditionally gather. Some analysts link decisions made in this camp in the early 2000s to subsequent changes in the global financial system, including the easing of banking regulations, which indirectly contributed to the 2008 financial crisis. It is noteworthy that many decisions, presumably made in the Bohemian Grove, are never recorded in writing. They are implemented through a complex system of mutual agreements and tacit understandings among participants. This creates a situation where proving a direct link between a meeting in the Grove and subsequent global decisions is virtually impossible. Critics of the Bohemian Grove point to a fundamental contradiction between democratic values and the closed nature of such meetings. When key decisions affecting the lives of millions of people are made in an informal setting without public oversight, it undermines the very foundations of the democratic process. Bohemian Grove has seen within its walls practically all American presidents of the last century. This tradition began with Theodore Roosevelt, who first visited the mysterious grove in 1905, while still a sitting president. According to eyewitnesses, Roosevelt was so impressed by the atmosphere and the influence of the people gathered there that he later called the place the most interesting men's club in America. Herbert Hoover, who became a member of the Bohemian Club long before his presidency, regularly visited the Grove for over 50 years. It was he who uttered the famous phrase that the most important affairs of the country are decided not in the White House, but under the shade of California redwoods. Dwight Eisenhower's presence in the Grove is documented. In 1950, before his election, he met there with key financiers who subsequently supported his election campaign. Richard Nixon was a frequent guest at Bohemian Grove, with his first visit dating back to 1953, when he served as vice president. It is noteworthy that in 1971, a year before the Watergate scandal, Nixon was seen in lively conversation with high-ranking CIA officials in one of the secluded corners of the Grove. Ronald Reagan, long before his presidency, was a regular member of the club and regularly participated in theatrical performances held in the Grove. There is a photograph from 1957 where Reagan, still an actor, stands in a group of participants in the Cremation of Care ceremony. After being elected president, he continued to visit Bohemian Grove, albeit with less regularity. Both Bush presidents, father and son, were also members of the club. George Bush Sr. was seen in the Grove several months before the start of Operation Desert Storm, where, according to some reports, he informally discussed the upcoming military campaign with the heads of major oil companies. His son, George Bush Jr., visited the Grove in July 2008, just a few months before the peak of the global financial crisis. Bill Clinton, although not an official member of the club, visited the Grove as a guest in 1991, shortly before announcing his participation in the presidential election. Some analysts link his subsequent victory to contacts established precisely during this visit. Barack Obama, according to unofficial sources, also visited Bohemian Grove as a guest before his election as president. As for Donald Trump, there is no reliable information about his presence in the Grove, although some sources claim that he received invitations but declined them. It is noteworthy that many key decisions in American politics strangely correlate with the annual gatherings at Bohemian Grove. The decision to invade Iraq in 2003 was made shortly after the July meeting, where key figures of the Bush administration were present. Similarly, the plan to rescue the banking system at the height of the 2008 crisis was developed by people who regularly visited the Grove. Of course, a direct causal link is difficult to establish, but the coincidences are too numerous to ignore. In the shadow of majestic sequoias, where the powerful of this world shed their masks of formality, a true corporate symphony of power unfolds. Bohemian Grove has long been a magnet for the planet's financial and industrial elite. Here, among ancient trees, one can encounter the heads of the largest technology companies, oil magnates, and banking kings, whose names constantly appear on the front pages of business publications. Of particular value is the Mandalay campsite, one of the most prestigious in the club's hierarchy. According to former employees, this is traditionally where the heads of Wall Street's largest investment banks stay. In an informal setting, over a glass of whiskey by the campfire, strategies are discussed that subsequently shape global financial trends. Among the Grove's regulars are executives from Fortune 500 corporations. David Rockefeller attended meetings for decades while he was alive. The founders of Silicon Valley's tech giants also consider club membership a mandatory attribute of their status. According to some reports, a prototype of the first iPhone was informally demonstrated to a select circle in Bohemian Grove a year before its official presentation. It is noteworthy that many corporate mergers and acquisitions that changed the landscape of the global economy originate precisely here. There is a known case where the heads of two competing oil companies, having accidentally become camping neighbors, came to the idea of merging assets after 2 weeks of informal communication. The deal, valued at tens of billions of dollars, was officially announced 3 months after the meeting in the Grove. Representatives of the banking sector form a special caste within the club. Heads of the Federal Reserve, including Alan Greenspan and Ben Bernanke, have repeatedly attended meetings. Many experts link the decision to ease banking regulations in the early 2000s to informal agreements reached precisely in Bohemian Grove. The influence of the business elite on political processes through the club's mechanisms is hard to overestimate. CEOs of corporations controlling media resources meet here with high-ranking officials in an environment devoid of protocols and transcripts. This creates ideal conditions for coordinating positions on key issues of market regulation and international trade. The veil of secrecy surrounding the Bohemian Grove has more than once become the object of close journalistic attention. Despite stringent security measures and a vow of silence from participants, some reporters managed to get behind the scenes of this closed world and lift the curtain of secrecy. The first publications about the mysterious club appeared as early as the late 19th century. In 1899, a San Francisco Examiner journalist published a brief note about strange gatherings of influential people in the forests of Northern California. But this publication did not attract widespread attention. The real breakthrough occurred in 1952, when a Life magazine reporter managed to infiltrate the Grove's territory disguised as service staff. His photographs of the "one ceremony" became the first visual evidence of the existence of mysterious rituals. The club's management reacted instantly. Security measures were tightened, and all employees were forbidden from bringing any recording devices onto the premises. In the 70s, amidst a wave of public interest in closed elite clubs, several independent journalists attempted to investigate the activities of the Bohemian Grove. The most famous was Philip Weiss's work, published in Spy magazine in 1989. Weiss managed to infiltrate the Grove posing as a waiter and spent several days there, observing the elite's life from the inside. In his article, he described in detail the participants' daily routine, their informal conversations, and of course, the famous owl ceremony. However, the real information explosion occurred in the early 2000s, when the well-known alternative journalist Alex Jones managed not only to infiltrate the Grove's territory, but also to secretly film the Cremation of Care ceremony. Using a hidden camera, he captured the procession in red robes, the burning of an effigy, and the giant stone owl, which had previously only been rumored. The video footage published by Jones caused a flurry of discussion on the internet and became the basis for many conspiracy theories. Journalists used various methods to obtain information about closed events. Some got jobs as service personnel, others used friendly connections with employees, and still others used modern technologies, from drones to directional microphones. There are known cases where reporters rented boats and tried to approach the Grove's territory from the Russian River, but most such attempts were thwarted by security. The club's reaction to journalistic investigations has always been predictably negative. After each publication, security measures were tightened, new personnel screening protocols were introduced, and in some cases, even lawsuits were initiated against journalists. The official position of the Bohemian Club is unchanging. Everything that happens on the Grove's territory is a private matter for the participants, and any attempts to invade their personal space are unethical and illegal. It is noteworthy that many large media companies, whose executives are themselves members of the club, avoid covering the topic of the Bohemian Grove or do so extremely superficially. This creates a situation of an information vacuum, where official sources remain silent and alternative media are often prone to sensationalism and exaggeration. Despite all the efforts of journalists, the Bohemian Grove remains one of the most closed and mysterious places on the planet, where the boundary between documented facts and conspiratorial conjectures remains blurred. The Bohemian Grove, shrouded in mystery and rumors, inevitably gives rise to numerous conspiracy theories. But where does documented reality end and fiction begin? Let's delve into the most popular conspiratorial narratives associated with this enigmatic club. The first and most common theory asserts that the Bohemian Grove is the center of a world government, where a small group of chosen individuals makes decisions that determine the destinies of billions of people. Proponents of this version point to the composition of participants, presidents, prime ministers, corporate heads, and conclude that a global conspiracy exists. However, critical analysis shows that, despite the influence of individual members, the club does not possess formal mechanisms for making binding decisions. Many alleged, quote, zero turnout, upon closer inspection, to be ordinary business negotiations. The second popular theory links the rituals of the Bohemian Grove with satanic cults and human sacrifices. The quote, one ceremony, with its pagan symbolism, indeed looks sinister in amateur video recordings. However, numerous testimonies from former employees and even critically minded journalists who infiltrated the club's grounds, confirm that only an effigy is burned, and the entire ritual is theatrical in nature. The third theory suggests that secret political deals are struck at the Bohemian Grove, determining the outcomes of elections and international conflicts. Indeed, informal communication among politicians and businessmen can foster the formation of alliances and strategies. However, there is no direct evidence that decisions to start wars or economic crises are made specifically at the Grove. Correlation between meetings at the club and subsequent events does not imply causation. The fourth common theory links the Bohemian Grove with other secret societies, Masons, Illuminati, the Bilderberg Group, and asserts the existence of a single hierarchical structure of global control. Documented evidence, however, indicates that these organizations, while having overlapping memberships, function independently and often pursue different goals. The most modern conspiracy theory concerns technological control. Allegedly, at the Bohemian Grove, the elite plans the implementation of total surveillance systems and mind manipulation. This theory is particularly popular in the era of artificial intelligence and big data development. However, an analysis of available information about discussions at the club does not confirm the existence of such plans. What can be said with certainty? The Bohemian Grove is indeed a meeting place for influential people who spend time in an atmosphere of secrecy. Strange rituals with pagan symbolism do indeed take place there. Participants do discuss important issues of world politics and economics. But to turn these facts into proof of a global conspiracy is to make an unfounded logical leap. Perhaps the truth is much more prosaic. The Bohemian Grove is an elite club of interests, where influential people relax from publicity and formalities in the company of their peers. Pagan rituals may simply be a tradition, a theatrical performance without deep sacral meaning, and informal conversations, a natural desire to discuss common problems in a comfortable setting. Critical thinking requires separating confirmed facts from speculation, even if the latter appear more exciting. The Bohemian Grove remains one of the most closed and mysterious places on the planet, but this does not necessarily make it the center of a world conspiracy. Every summer, when the powerful of this world gather under the shade of California's redwoods, another assembly appears at the gates of the Bohemian Grove. Dozens, and sometimes hundreds of protesters. With placards, megaphones, and determination in their eyes, they stand along the road leading to the closed club, trying to draw attention to what they consider a threat to democracy. Protests at the walls of Bohemian Grove have a long history. The first organized demonstrations began in the 70s of the 20th century, when, amidst the anti-war movement, activists accused club members of inciting the conflict in Vietnam. Since then, protests have become an annual tradition, gathering people of various political views, from left-wing anti-globalists to right-wing conservatives. The main argument of critics has remained unchanged for decades. It is unacceptable for key decisions affecting the lives of millions of people to be made in a closed club. Without democratic control and public discussion, reads one of the typical slogans of the protesters. Protests became particularly active after the publication of Alex Jones's scandalous video in the early 2000s. Footage of a pagan ceremony with a giant owl caused shock among many religious conservatives who joined the protests, considering what was happening in the Grove to be satanic rituals. In 2008, against the backdrop of the global financial crisis, the number of protesters reached a record 500 people. Activists accused the financial elite gathered at Bohemian Grove of deliberately collapsing the global economy for their own benefit. Demonstrators chanted, "You play, we pay," hinting that the consequences of the crisis were felt by ordinary citizens, not by members of the elite club. The reaction of the Bohemian Grove organizers to the protests has always been predictable: complete disregard. Official representatives of the club never comment on the protests, preferring to strengthen security measures. Private guards patrol the perimeter of the grove, and on the days of key ceremonies, local police officers join them. Some former club members who dared to break the vow of silence admitted that inside the grove, protests are perceived as an annoying misunderstanding or even as a subject for jokes. They laugh at the protesters, considering them incapable of understanding the complexity of global processes, one former club member wrote in his memoirs. In recent years, new methods have been added to traditional forms of protest. Activists use drones to film the grove's territory from the air, organize online broadcasts of their actions, and create detailed maps of the camp's locations within the club. Former employees, waiters, guards, cleaners, who decided to tell what they saw inside, play a special role in criticizing Bohemian Grove. Their testimonies often become the basis for journalistic investigations and new protest actions. Despite all the efforts of the critics, the effectiveness of the protests remains questionable. Over decades of active confrontation, not a single law has been passed limiting the club's activities, and its membership remains just as elitist. Bohemian Grove continues to operate in its closed mode, and the powerful of this world still gather every summer in the California forest to spend 2 weeks away from prying eyes and, possibly, decide the fates of millions. The mysterious Bohemian Grove has left a deep mark not only on world politics and economy, but also on popular culture. The closed club, with its enigmatic rituals and influential members, has become a source of inspiration for many artistic works, often balancing on the edge between facts and fiction. One of the first significant reflections of Bohemian Grove in popular culture was the novel Secret Glory by writer Dean Koontz, published in 1999. Although the author does not name the club directly, the secret society he describes, with its rituals around a giant owl, bears an obvious resemblance to the real Bohemian Grove. The book instantly became a bestseller and introduced millions of readers to the phenomenon of the closed club. In cinema, the most famous work inspired by Bohemian Grove is considered to be Stanley Kubrick's thriller Eyes Wide Shut, released in 1999. The famous scene of a secret ceremony in a country mansion where participants wear masks and robes has many parallels with the rituals of the Californian club. Kubrick himself never publicly acknowledged this connection, but many researchers of his work point to obvious coincidences. The television series House of Cards included in its plot a fictional elite club, Elysium, where politicians and businessmen gather for informal meetings. The creators of the series admitted in interviews that Bohemian Grove was the prototype. In the music industry, echoes of the mysterious club's influence can also be found. The song Bohemian Grove by the band Rage Against the Machine directly criticizes closed elite gatherings and their alleged influence on world politics. The music video for this song, filled with owl symbolism and pagan rituals, has garnered millions of views online. In the world of computer games, Bohemian Grove has also found its reflection. The popular Deus Ex series, which explores themes of global conspiracies and secret societies, includes a location clearly inspired by the Californian club, with similar rituals and owl symbolism. It is interesting that many works of mass culture that touch upon the theme of Bohemian Grove balance between critical understanding of the phenomenon of closed elite clubs and the exploitation of conspiracy theories. This creates a peculiar, vicious circle. Artistic works draw inspiration from real facts about Bohemian Grove, but at the same time contribute to the spread of myths and exaggerations about it. Can it be proven that behind the scenes of elite leisure, the fate of the world is truly decided? This question has troubled researchers of the Bohemian Grove for decades. Analyzing the chronology of meetings in the Californian forest and subsequent global events, one can find intriguing coincidences, although direct evidence remains elusive. One of the most documented cases occurred in July 1971. According to journalistic investigations, key figures of the Nixon administration, including Henry Kissinger, were present at a meeting in the Hill camp. Less than a month after this meeting, the decision to abandon the dollar's gold standard was made, a step that radically changed the global financial system. A coincidence? Perhaps. But a former Treasury Department employee who wished to remain anonymous claimed in his memoirs that it was in the Bohemian Grove that Kissinger informally agreed on this plan with representatives of the largest banks. Another notable case is the meeting in the Grove in the summer of 1980, a few months before the U.S. presidential elections. According to eyewitnesses, Ronald Reagan, then still a candidate, spent several hours in conversation with the heads of leading media corporations. After this meeting, the tone of media coverage of his campaign in major media outlets noticeably changed for the better. In the 2000s, analysts noted a correlation between discussions in the Bohemian Grove and subsequent decisions in the field of internet regulation. A meeting of technology giants' leaders with intelligence agency representatives in July 2007 preceded the expansion of mass electronic surveillance programs, later exposed by Edward Snowden. However, it is critically important to understand, correlation does not imply causation. Many decisions allegedly made in the Grove could have been the result of lengthy formal processes, with informal meetings being just one of many factors. As Stanford University political science professor Michael Thompson notes, informal networks of influence have always existed. The Bohemian Grove is just one of many platforms where elites can exchange ideas without protocols. Skeptics point to the lack of direct evidence. There is no documented proof that binding decisions are made in the Grove. Many alleged conspiracies turn out to be ordinary business contacts upon closer inspection. On the other hand, the very secrecy of the club raises legitimate questions. Why are meetings held in such secrecy? Why are strange rituals necessary? And most importantly, why do people who publicly advocate for transparency and democratic procedures participate in closed gatherings? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the middle. The Bohemian Grove is not the center of a world conspiracy, but neither is it an innocuous leisure club. It is a space where connections and relationships are formed in an informal setting, which subsequently influence decision-making through official institutions. As one former participant noted, "Laws are not written in the Grove, but the conditions for their emergence are created." In the world of the global elite, Bohemian Grove holds a special place among other exclusive clubs. To understand its true significance, it's worth comparing it to similar organizations. The Bilderberg Group, founded in 1954, holds annual conferences in luxurious hotels across Europe and North America. Unlike the theatrical rituals of Bohemian Grove, Bilderberg focuses on formal discussions about geopolitics and economics. Participants openly acknowledge their membership, and discussion topics are published, albeit in a generalized form. The Davos Forum represents an even more open platform, where business leaders, politicians, and public figures meet under the scrutiny of cameras. There are no mystical rituals or strict secrecy here. On the contrary, organizers actively invite the press and publish reports on the discussions. So, what makes Bohemian Grove unique? First and foremost, it's the combination of the highest caliber of participants with an almost religious atmosphere of mystery. If Davos and Bilderberg are, after all, business platforms, Bohemian Grove creates a space where the elite can temporarily step outside their official roles, immersing themselves in an atmosphere of archaic rituals and informal brotherhood. Our research shows that the real influence of Bohemian Grove lies not so much in specific decisions, but in creating a special network of trust among participants. When a corporate president and a senator jointly participate in a strange ritual at the foot of a stone owl, a special bond forms between them, extending beyond ordinary business relationships. It's important to understand, Bohemian Grove is not a place where laws are written or international treaties are signed. It's a space where a common elite worldview is formed, where informal contacts are established that can subsequently influence official decisions. What does the future hold for such exclusive clubs in an era of informational transparency? On the one hand, technological advancements make maintaining secrecy increasingly difficult. Drones capable of breaching fences, social networks instantly spreading information, investigative journalists with miniature cameras, all this creates unprecedented challenges for closed communities. On the other hand, the elite's very need for such spaces doesn't disappear. In a world where every move of a public figure is recorded and analyzed, the value of places where one can speak frankly only increases. We will likely see an evolution of such clubs. They will retain their exclusivity, but will be forced to adapt to new realities, perhaps by abandoning the most exotic rituals or lifting the veil of secrecy over certain aspects of their activities. Ultimately, Bohemian Grove remains a mirror, reflecting both the achievements and contradictions of modern society. With its declared adherence to democratic values and the simultaneous concentration of power in the hands of a narrow circle of individuals. As long as there is an elite, there will be exclusive spaces where it gathers away from prying eyes,